Hello and welcome to another episode of Behind the Toys. My name is Jacob, aka Jacob's Toys. Now, my guest today is somebody that I'm sure the voice of will be very familiar. If you've listened to This Week in Marvel, a 10-year strong Marvel podcast, or possibly from his face, an incredible moustache from Instagram, Agent M, it is, of course, Ryan Penagos. How are you doing?
I am doing terrific. Thank you, Jacob. Very excited. I will give my hello Marvelites to all the viewers and listeners out there.
Amazing. Thank you ever so much for joining us. So we're going to go through a few questions. Obviously, the idea of Behind the Toys is to find out a little bit about you, find out a little bit about your collections and kind of your backstory and stuff. Because obviously people have listened to you for 10 years now, we said, it's an amazing podcast. If you don't already listen to it, then do tune in because it's amazing. It's just so full of just information. And I think what I like about it the most is all of the guests that you get on. So we get all this information from writers and artists and game designers and all sorts. And it's just so cool to listen to and just sort of hear those people kind of tell their stories. So do tune in. It's on all of the main sites and stuff. So This Week in Marvel. So Ryan, for those of you that might not know who you are, what is it that you do at Marvel, and what is the best thing about what you do at Marvel?
Remind me of the second part of the question, because the first part is sort of like there's many layers. So my official title is Vice President and Creative Executive for Marvel's Digital Media Group, which is we joke about it at Marvel, especially me and Lorraine when we're together, is like we have these long, ridiculous titles, and sometimes you have no clue what it means to the random person. But for me, it's I've been Marvel for 15 years, and I get to do a lot of cool stuff, hosting podcasts or videos, red carpets, convention stuff. But I also do a lot of work behind the scenes at Marvel, working on a lot of projects that may take a long time to come together. I'm working on some really fun stuff that I can't talk about. I get to work side by side with all the divisions, and maybe that's the answer for the second part. Is the coolest thing about my job at Marvel is that I get to participate and work with Marvel Comics, Marvel Games, Marvel Studios, Marvel Collecting, like all the Hasbro of it all and everything else. Like every part of Marvel I talk to, I do something with, I set stuff up with, sometimes I give feedback on, it's all over the place. So part of being at Marvel for 15 years and it always being fun for me is that like every day is going to be different. Every day is going to have something new and something fun to sort of tackle or talk about or talk to. So yeah, that kind of
what an amazing role. I mean, it's just sort of everyone's dream role. I think everyone that's into Marvel is like, you're the guy who's got it. It's just because it has got so many divisions now. I mean, like, I've been a fan of Marvel Comics and read Marvel Comics since I was very small, and obviously collected a lot more in the sort of last 10 to 15 years. But there are so many different divisions of it. You can't move without seeing Marvel. And I think what's really nice as a collector and as a fan is that it's now a household name. It's, you say Marvel to pretty much anyone and they know what you're talking about. Whereas, back when I was in school, you kind of had to explain, it's comic books, it's Spider-Man, it's superheroes and stuff. So it's so it's so nice now that it's just such a mainstream kind of household name and such.
I know, but it's crazy too, just because saying I've been at Marvel for 15 years, we had to do a lot of work we were doing a lot of work in those early years that I was there as we were ramping up and building Marvel as a bigger brand. Obviously it had been going on for decades before that, but it felt like that mid 2000s period as Marvel Studios was really starting to ramp up, getting things off the ground, that elevated everything else. And I was there watching it happen and seeing like, not everybody knew who Iron Man was and knew who Tony Stark was. And like, I remember there are these, I think it's called like Iron Man's Big Adventure or something like that. We had to create these not stop motion, but 3 CGI animated videos back in like 2000, must've been 2006 or 2007, of Iron Man with Hulk and Spider-Man fighting giant robots and showing that Iron Man is a guy in a suit. of armor, not a robot, because a lot of kids back then thought he was just a robot. And so
Yeah.
like you think about that now, and everyone knows who Tony Stark is. Everyone
Yeah.
knows who Iron Man is. So it's really fascinating from being on one side and looking at it now.
I mean, I love the history of Marvel as well, because obviously, you know, like any big popular brand or franchise, it had its dark days, it had its dips, you know, and there was that history, and it's so great to, as a fan, it's so great to see how big and strong it is now. But it wasn't always like that, you know. That's the journey it's been on, and I think it's nice for people to kind of learn that, and to see that it's not just this huge entity that's always been here. There's always been there's been a story behind it, which is fantastic. And as I said, as a fan, it's lovely to see how big it is now, and how it's in households and household name. And I think for all generations as well, you know, there seems to be, even just down to cartoons now, you know, there's cartoons that are aimed at, you know, preschool and kindergarten, and then there's cartoons like, you know, animated series like What If, that's aimed at very much the much more mature audience, and just sort of seeing that whole array is fantastic. So obviously behind you can see a nice little collection there. You know, being at Marvel for 15 years, you know, you're bound to have built up a bit of a collection. So what is it that you collect, if you like? Because obviously you can see behind me, I'm all about Marvel Legends. That's my fandom. That was, for me, it was the physical representation of those characters that I grew up reading. But what is it that you collect? What specifically do you go for?
So right now, my main thing to collect as a fan is Transformers. I collect all kinds of Transformers. I also love Marvel Legends dearly. I think that team is doing some amazing work. I used my office, one of my offices at Marvel. We had 7 people crammed into a very big office, but it was 7 people in an office, and right outside it sat Jesse Falcon. And Jesse is a legend to anyone who knows their Marvel Legends. He is, he's one of the creators of the line. So I would always, you know, go outside and talk to him and bug him and have him show me some of his toys. I have a great photo of him holding, I think it's a House of M Iron Man, because I think that's the design from Marvel Legends of, you know, 2007, 8, something like that. So I look at Marvel Legends as something amazing, but it's also work. So the Marvel side of things is, I love it, but it's also everything in my head when it comes to Marvel is this something I'm doing for work, or it's tied to work in some way? So there's a little bit of a difference for it. Doesn't mean I love it any less. It's just my pure just collecting for me is mostly right now Transformers. But, you know, I'm like you. I've been a Marvel fan since I was a little kid. I would get Secret Wars figures when I was little and loved those. Wore them off. The paint would always come off. Those guys. Loved them. When I got a little bit older, I remember getting really into famous covers. Do you remember the famous covers line?
Yeah.
I love the famous covers. Those were so good. So I got hardcore into those for a while, but I live in New York City, and I've moved a lot, and space is at a premium. So over the years, my collection has sort of like waxed and waned and grown, and it's bigger or smaller. And so I got rid of most of my stuff at one time or another. And even my Marvel Legends, I would get a lot of Marvel Legends in for work, but I like to give stuff to kids and give stuff to people. When we had guests come to Marvel headquarters, I would give a tour, and I'd be like, here's a toy. So I'd probably given away more Marvel Legends than I currently own, which I own. I don't, they're like all over the spinner rack behind me. There's like 4 shelves full of them that aren't on camera all the time. I've got like my Galactuses over there. Like I have the Marvel, two of the Marvel Universe Galactus, and then one of the Toy Biz Galactus. I'm just looking around to see what else. I've got like random Marvel toys. Like Marvel's everywhere in the house, you know. It's like the Infinity Gauntlet is right up there. The Nano Gauntlet's over there. I have a Captain America shield right here. I have Stormbreaker over here. It's all over the place.
Just everywhere.
And then of course comics. At one point I had tons and tons of comics. Something like 45 long boxes of just single issues. And I had broken up with the woman I was living with, and this was when I was early days at Marvel, and I was like, I need to pay to move So I sold 40 some odd long boxes of comics. I got rid of most of my collection. And now I have probably 3 long boxes worth, the spinner rack behind me and a couple others of just single issue comics. And then I have boxes of collections and bookshelves of collections. Cause for me, it's more about the reading of our comics than anything else. I did collect posters. I've collected a lot of like movie posters and stuff, but that's expensive, and I don't have a lot of, even with a big house, we haven't really put up a lot of those like cool Mondo posters and bottleneck gallery stuff. I have a tube from Mondo upstairs somewhere that I don't think I ever opened, and I don't remember what's in it. And it's like, I kind of never want to open it because that could probably be some like crazy expensive piece of Mondo art. And I want it to be like a time capsule. I'll give it to my daughter, be like, open this and sell it if like there's an emergency. If you need, $5,000 in 20 years.
Break in case of emergency.
Break in case of emergency.
Amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot of various things. Oh, and video games. I'm a huge video game guy, and like I have all my consoles. I've luckily never sold any of my consoles or lost any of them.
Oh wow!
So it's we just moved this year into a new house, and I'm still in the process of like organizing and finding everything. Like I know I have a box right next to me which has my Sega Genesis 32X CD, the Mega Drive for you guys. And it's also got my Sega Saturn in there. And I'm like super hyped to get into those at some point too.
That's awesome. That is awesome. I talked to my son actually when we talk about computer games now, because I had a Mega Drive, as you say, Genesis for you guys. And it was the Sonic the Hedgehog game, that you started it, you got 3 lives, like that's it. Like if you want to get through that game, you have to earn those lives. You have to kind of build the coins up, the rings up. And he can't quite get it. He can't quite get the concept of what. So he only had 3 lives. I was like, yeah. And a computer game, as you're on that subject, that still beats me to this day was the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles one. Do you remember that old one?
For NES?
I had it on a Commodore 64, like a proper setup. And it was always I think it was over a dam or a sewer, and I'd always run out. Still to this day, I haven't gone past it. It still gives me kind of shivers and stuff.
It's punishingly hard. I have a copy of it, and I'm like, and I have my NES like over there. I've hooked it up in the new house. And I'm like, I don't want to play that game. That's just too much.
No, it's such good. I mean, I loved my consoles back in the day. It's funny you should mention New York though, because that's where I came over and stayed in America for a few years, and it was New York that I went to. And it was actually at Midtown Comics that I discovered Marvel Legends. So it was in the 2002 era when Toy Biz had obviously just launched, and they had the kind of the big boxes and stuff. And that was the first time that I'd kind of seen them, because I was big into my comics as well. And similar to you, I sold a lot off. I kept a few special ones that were sort of had significant meanings for me and stuff. But it was there that I kind of first picked up my first Marvel Legend, because I was like, this is cool. This is like, it's like the action figures I had as a kid, but there's just something a bit different about it. So yeah, so it was New York where I actually discovered that. But
where in New York were you staying?
I was actually staying upstate New York in a place called Putnam Valley. And then when I was down in the city, I was all over. I was down in Greenwich Village. I stayed up in the Bronx for a little bit as well. So I was over there for about 3 years, but I've still got very good friends over there as well. Friends that one of their children is on Broadway now, which is amazing. So I stay in really good touch with them. And actually bringing it back to Marvel Legends, it was when the Cuckoo Sisters came out, and they were, they were like unicorn dust over here. Like you just couldn't pick them up at one point. And I reached out to my friend and I said, I'm looking for this. Like, don't judge me. they didn't quite know the extent of my collection. I was like, I know it looks like a little schoolgirl kind of figure, but it's not. It's part of the X-Men. If you see one, can you pick it up? And she did, and she shipped it over to me. And brilliant. It was just lovely to sort of have that connection still. But it was in Midtown as well. While you talk about comics, and I was there for the issue 500 of Spider-Man, the big kind of thick issue and stuff. I've still got it. It's on. I can't show it. It's literally just there. And Midtown were doing a signing, and obviously all of the guys that were involved were signing it. And then I took it with me to a convention over here in the UK a couple of years back, and got JRJR to sign it as well, because he was one of the ones that wasn't there, but obviously his name was on there. So to kind of get that signature on it at the end was really quite nice. Just kept the comic books live for me. So okay, so talking about kind of grails, I mean, grail items is a term that's thrown around loads at the moment, especially in the collector kind of communities. But do you have any grail items? Is there any that you own, or any that you're still chasing, or that you hope to come across any brands, of course?
Yeah. So I got back into Transformers collecting just this year because like I said, we moved into a house. We actually bought a house in the Bronx, and it's a big great house. We finally had all our stuff in one place, not in a storage unit and not in closets and stuff. And like there are boxes I still have that I know I have. Like I peeked in and I was like, oh, there's my G1 Optimus, and I saw another one that has like Galvatron, and like, you know, I'm excited to find someday get to those. But I started to see some of like the Transformers, and it sort of rekindled a love for collecting those that I hadn't thought about in years. And so I started to think about like, oh, what do I want from those, and what do I love? And like the character I love, you know, a ton is a character called Cup from Transformers, and he's like this gruff old grizzled dude he first appears in the movie, the animated movie from '86, and I can very clearly remember playing with his toy and a couple of those toys just until they broke when I was younger. And so I've been trying to get every Cup action figure, you know, every version of him that I can find. I think I have one official one left, and they have like, there's a weird thing with Transformers where they have like third-party toys, and so I've got a couple of those left, but you know, mostly I'm trying to collect the main Hasbro stuff. You know, I've been slowly like figuring out the Titans and the big guys from those, and I have my old Triptychon, Triptychon is basically a Godzilla version of Transformer.
Wow.
Like from like 86, 87, something like that. And I still have mine, and it's actually still works. The battery, like the motors, because he has like this, he walks. And so my daughter loves to play with him. And so I kind of want to get a new one of those just to have a proper like clean version. Yeah, with Transformers, it's I've just been sort of like finding what's fun and what's cool. There's some very expensive ones that is just like, I can't do that. I don't have like a Grail, but it's just trying to like pick and choose some really great ones here and there. And then on the Marvel side, I really, you know, I want to try to get every version of MODOK I can.
Yes.
In any way, shape, or form. So most of my MODOKs are behind me. I think there might be one or two around, but I'm very close. I'm missing one Lego, and I think that's it. I even have this. There's this like little guy. Hasbro did this line of, I don't know. There's like these little weebly wobbly guys, and so I don't know. I can't remember what this is called, but there's a MODOK one of him. So I have MODOK. And if I can make sure I get all the MODOKs, that's the thing. And then eventually maybe try to get some more Thanos figures, because back in the 10 years ago, it was super easy to collect every Thanos action figure. There was like the one from the 90s, Marvel Universe, Diamond Select, and like you could get all your Thanos figures pretty easily. But now, Thanos being in the movies and being such a prominent part of everything, they made a lot more Thanos.
Yeah, there are a lot. There are quite a lot. I mean, I think I've got every MCU one that they've done. And I've got a couple of the comic book ones, but it's the same as Hulk. Like Hulk was always, I always wanted like a really definitive Hulk. And since Hasbro kind of nailed the mold in the most recent kind of 80th one, they've obviously just released every version of it, and I'm loving it. Even the compound Hulk that came out recently, I was like,
I've got him right here. It looks so great.
Sign me up.
It's terrific.
Yeah. He was a really good one to photograph, because I do like taking pictures of my figures as well, and kind of showing them off in that way. And I kind of posed red and green behind him and kind of had it split down. I was really proud of that photo. I was really pleased with it. Yeah, I mean, a Grail item is, it's a bizarre term, because it isn't necessarily an expensive figure or something that even everybody would chase after, but it means something to you. I have to ask you actually, because MODOK is obviously your guy. You talk about MODOK a lot on your podcast. Yes. He's your guy. You were in an episode, weren't you?
I am.
I've got to clear this up. That was definitely you, wasn't it?
Yeah. Episode 7 of Marvel's MODOK on Hulu. I'm not sure where is it on. Disney Plus with
yeah, we've got it on Disney Plus here with Star.
Yeah, with Star. But over here it's on Hulu, and episode 7, I have a cameo. Just they made a puppet version of me in for that scene. I didn't get to do the voice just because of everything that was going on. But my character plays just a guy serving food at a restaurant, and MODOK orders a giant plate of lasagna from him, which is tremendous.
I really enjoyed the show. It
I'm
kind of got
glad.
mixed reviews. It really did get mixed reviews, but for me, MODOK was always, I love the big bad version of him. I love sort of, because he's quite an imposing character. And when you kind of really look into his background and I think it's one thing that, I know that the Avengers game has had very mixed reviews. But that was one thing I really did enjoy. I loved seeing the development of MODOK in the game.
Yeah.
But
really interesting character stuff that they did with him. And look, he's a weird, awesome character. He's like Jack Kirby, just to a T. Jack saying, I'm going to make something cool and weird and put it out there. And he did.
Yeah. But that's what I love so much about the recent show on Hulu or Star for us over here, is that it kind of took that craziness of the character and kind of spun it around and gave it that kind of comedic edge. It was very kind of Robot Chicken-esque, and it for me, it worked. It was an enjoyable watch. There wasn't an episode that I zoned off from. I just took it as what it was and really enjoyed it. And I think it kind of opened up kind of MODOK to a lot of people, because I'm not gonna press you for anything, but we're gonna see him at some point. We're not finished with MODOK. We're gonna see him at some point. And obviously with the Marvel Legends as well, they've just given us that kind of very overdue updated Toy Biz version, because obviously a lot of us, myself included, had the Toy Biz version, and then they gave us that Marvel Legends kind of nice deluxe bit, and that was a really cool purchase. When that came through, I was like, yep, he's arrived. Let's just put him with the AIM soldiers, and that's good. So I've got like a nice little, can't even see it, it's down the bottom there, but a nice little MODOK set up with all the soldiers and stuff. And obviously we got the Supreme as well recently, so it's really kind of filling that little display out.
Did you get the tour MODOK, the
no,
sort of rockabilly one?
I haven't yet. And I was going to go on to that, because you obviously got the pleasure of kind of revealing that to us all. And you teased it for quite a while with kind of showing us the side of the box, and people were going crazy. Oh, it could be this figure, it could be that. But I think anybody that kind of had listened to the podcast, they were kind of like, it's going to be a MODOK. Come on, let's be honest. It's going to be a MODOK. And I think it looks brilliant. I really do think it's
so good. It's really terrific. The tweaks to him, the color. I know it's like, parts of it are the same old, but it's like the simple color changes, and then the accessories, everything. And then the box itself. I actually have the box on display in another part of my office, just because it's gorgeous and it's full of those wonderful details.
Yeah, it is, and obviously it comes with the captain as well, which is people are going to want that. They're going to want to collect that line. So if you're going to flesh that team out, you're going to have to pick up the MODOK. But that was a Hasbro Con exclusive, wasn't it, for the con just gone? But obviously you revealed it quite a while ago. How was that for you? Like being able to do that as a reveal?
I love that stuff. I look at all of our partners, whether it's Hasbro or video game partners or whatever. It's like, what can I do to help? How in any way can I put something out that like supports the business for you guys? And for me, it's great. It's very on brand for me to do something with MODOK, and I'm all for that. And so, when Dan, my friend over on the Hasbro team, was like, hey, what do you think about doing this? I was like, yes, sign me up. Because I had also teamed up with them in the announcement of the newer Marvel Legends MODOK last year when we did that on a stream. Yes. And so, yes, if I am thus deemed the MODOK guy for Marvel and Marvel toys, I'll be very happy with that.
Where did the fascination for that character come? How long have you had it? Is it pre-working for Marvel or since you've worked for Marvel? Because he is quite a bizarre one for your casual kind of comic book fan or superhero fan. They're not necessarily going to come across him until recently with the TV shows, computer games, etc. But how did you come across him? Because I was trying to think for myself when I first was introduced to the character, and I can't actually pinpoint it.
So it probably started just being a big Jack Kirby fan, over time and discovering different characters and different things, and just seeing that like there's just something so weird and pure about the beautiful oddity of the character, and I was like, I love this guy. So that would have been in the early, I'd like started to get really deep into it in the early 2000s probably. And just, you know, sometimes you just get like connect with those characters. Like,
Of course.
yeah, everybody loves Optimus Prime. Everybody loves Spider-Man. Everybody loves like the big name characters, but there's something special about those characters who are like off the beaten path that you love. Like for G.I. Joe, my favorite character is a guy called Road Pig, who's just this like super buff, shirtless dreadnought who like, I don't know, is not very well known, but that was for me, it was the toy. I got this toy as a kid and I was like, he's the strongest one of all. And, you know, with MODOK, I was just like, he's so weird and so cool. I just glommed onto him and fell in love with the character. And when I worked at Wizard Magazine, I worked at Toy Fair Magazine as like a writer for some time, and then worked with the Toy Fair people, but I worked at Wizard Magazine for 3 years. And as a going away gift, whenever someone would leave Wizard back in those days, they would get all the rest of the staff would pitch together and get them a commission of their favorite characters by their favorite artist. And so me being a big Jack Kirby fan, my favorite characters are MODOK, and over on the DC side, the Demon Etrigan, who is, I love Etrigan. I might love Etrigan a little bit more than MODOK, but like I don't work for DC, so too bad. And so the guys and the gals over at Wizard got me a commission of the Demon riding MODOK, drawn by my favorite artist, who is Steve Dillon. And it's like my most treasured. That is probably like, in terms of a collection. And if I had a fire in my house, after making sure my family was safe, I would probably pull that off the wall and run out.
Yeah.
There's only one of it in the world, and it's mine.
That is like, amazing.
It's really important to me. And it's really special. So yeah, the MODOK stuff goes back, you know, now 20 years or more of just like knowing this character and loving it. And when I was early days at Marvel, I guess not early days, but like, you know, 10, 13 years ago, we started to do this stop motion animated series on Marvel's YouTube channel and social media called Marvel Superheroes What The? And I helped come up with it because, one, I love our brand of comics called Marvel What The? And it was just like comedy comics that we did in the 90s, sort of that was a more recent version of Marvel's Not Brand Ech comics from the 60s. And it's just like making fun of Marvel, making fun of comics, making fun of characters, like having fun and obviously like, you know, celebrating the idea and the absurdity of our superheroes. And I loved it. It's like probably very influential in my weirdness and my humor. And so we had hired a guy named Alex who I worked with at Wizard. He was an amazing stop motion animator, like incredible. And we were just like, let's do a stop motion animated show on our YouTube using Marvel Legends. And so we decided that we wanted to have MODOK as one of the main characters, Deadpool and a couple other characters. We gave them very specific personalities. Jesse Falcon voiced probably half the characters. And like, we just had a lot of fun, and I was able to like keep MODOK alive and in front of a lot of people during those years, using that Toy Biz or that Marvel Legends Build-A-Figure MODOK, which like I still will go back and watch some of those episodes, and it was just like, how did we get away with this? God bless us for doing something so dumb and so fantastic. And it's still there. Everybody can watch it on Marvel's YouTube channel. It's 100 and some odd episodes. It's fantastic.
That's incredible. I might have to go and watch it. I'm not sure I've seen it. I'm actually going to have to go and watch that after I come off. And
watch some of that. We do some funny, like, I can't believe they let us get away with what we do with Captain America. Like, we basically have him, like, I don't know. He sounds like he's from the 40s, and he's never like changed, and he's with stuff with Bucky that we do. It's a hoot. It's really fun.
I can't wait. So obviously, you know, in regards to you know, kind of bring it back, obviously you got to reveal that MODOK, that PulseCon exclusive. If you could reveal something else, what do you think it would be? If absolutely anything from kind of maybe Marvel, or even, from Transformers, if they were to create something for you to reveal, what would it be?
Fin Fang Foom, a giant Fin Fang Foom. That is what I'm actually looking at. I looked up and he's staring at me. I have a Fin Fang Foom from Hero Clicks up on a top shelf.
Yes,
because they have a really beautiful Fin Fang Foom. Again, it's like it goes back to Jack Kirby. That or God, give me some Celestials, like old school Kirby looking Celestials, big, beefy, meaty. Like, give me an Arishem. I'm like super close to getting like a Celestials tattoo of in the comics. Arishem has this thumbprint on his hand, and it's like sort of his judgment thing. I'm like this close to getting a tattoo of that because I love the original Eternals comics that Jack did, but I love Fin Fang Foom. I think he's a wild character. He's a big green dragon that sometimes wears purple shorts, and he can be he's almost MODOK in a way. Like, he can transform and be a little bit malleable depending on the creative team in the comics that's done stuff. CM Punk and Cullen Bunn did a really great run where Fin Fang Foom was like a farmer after he just been like through so much crap. He just wanted to live a happy life. It's like Fin Fang Foom wearing overalls is one of my favorite images.
That's incredible.
It's so good. So if I could get a big like Galactus or Sentinel sized Foom, that would be my dream.
It's funny because I was saying to a couple of my friends that I'd love it if the Hasbro team kind of did a re-release of him, but maybe on a smaller scale. So it wasn't quite the price point of the the Sentinel of Galactus, but it was still a big figure because I think so many people get behind it because it's just a cool looking character. He's just I'm with you on that. If you get to reveal a Fin Fang Foom, happy days. I'm 100% behind that. They've straight away got a buyer here.
I wish. Who knows? I'll look. They'll like, hey, do you want to reveal, Paste Pot Pete? I would also be like, yeah, I friggin' love Paste Pot Pete. Give me Paste Pot Pete because that's another
of course
bonkers character. I think he's a Ditko and Stan Lee character, but he's a dude who carries around a bucket of paste. The best. I love
him. Brilliant. So aside from MODOK, maybe let's do kind of more mainstream. Who would you be your kind of mainstream character that you like? What would be your favorite mainstream?
Look, I'm a Spider-Man Wolverine guy. Those were the characters that I grew up like. That was what really connected me. Reading Spider-Man comics, reading Wolverine comics, seeing those animated shows. Those are probably my favorite core characters in, if you're thinking of like the big Marvel heroes, because I grew up reading comics. I started reading when I was like 6, I think. And I was reading Punisher for some reason. I like very distinct memories of reading Punisher War Journal as a child, which is probably not appropriate, but I'm fine. And, and then reading Spider-Man and X-Men comics and like really digging in. And I've told the story before, but I remember being 10 years old and going to the Five and Dime, the local convenience store, pharmacy near my house. And it was like the end of the year, 1991. And I saw Infinity Gauntlet #6 and X-Men #3 on the spinner rack, and those covers and the characters, and just like I grabbed those two at the same time, and those were so important. And like that's why I have a deep love for Thanos, is like reading that series as a kid and like having to search for those back issues, because 6 was what I got. I didn't get 2 and 5 until years later because those were the hardest ones to get. But like I've read that series so much. So, getting Wolverine and then like digging into Spider-Man, I think, he's Spider-Man. He's the greatest. I think the greatest character in fiction. I don't know.
I did. Well, you work for Marvel, so but I can agree with that. Like that's hands down. I think he's one of the best. But I think it's just the beauty and the brilliance of making him so relatable, and that was something for me as well. Like as a young boy reading it, it was I could see myself in it, and that's what made it so brilliant. And watching him grow up, and then obviously the things like the relationships and the family issues, and it was just so relatable all the way through.
Yeah, it's,
Um,
in the team really nailed it in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and like that scene with
mm,
Stan Lee, obviously it gets us choked up. It gets me
of
choked up every
course.
time I see it, but
Yeah.
it's, anybody could be Spider-Man. That, like, that notion
Mm,
there is so important and so
yeah.
relevant and so key to why we love that character so much.
hmm And I think for me as well, just kind of going on a tangent, I want to talk about myself as well a little bit, Ryan. Like it's not all about you today. I want to say a little bit about me. But for me, Spider-Man, growing up with the character, like for me, Spider-Man, it isn't Peter Parker anymore. Spider-Man is all of those different versions, and he's one of my favorite ones to collect. I mean, every single figure they've pumped out, I've had to have, and every different costume, every different kind of variation, just because the title Spider-Man, it's just so relatable and
Yeah.
it means so much to me kind of personally. But I think I said to you in a message, my introduction to comic books was we weren't as fortunate over here to have kind of comic book stores that stocked all of the back issues and everything. So I would go down to a boot sale or the flea market with my grandmother, and we'd pick up like a handful of American comic books, as they literally were labeled American comic books, and you'd get like 5 for £1, and they were really random issues, and they were absolutely nothing to do with each other. They were, curse you, Marvel, for kind of splitting it out, because I just couldn't finish a story arc. Like it was part 2 of 5 of West Coast Avengers. And then, but I was introduced to characters like Iron Fist and Luke Cage and Ghost Rider, where I wouldn't have ordinarily have been introduced to them, because obviously on our televisions, we had the animated Spider-Man, we had animated X-Men, and they're all the kind of mainstream characters. And obviously they dipped in and out of various other characters and storylines and stuff. But kind of reading things like Ghost Rider, he's hands down one of my favorites, just because there was something just so cool about him. And at a time when collecting comic books wasn't necessarily deemed as a cool thing to do, he was a cool like it was where they are. Look at this guy. He's got a flaming skull for a head and rides a
Dude.
motorcycle. Like, the
I
guy's cool.
loved Ghost Rider. Like, there's Ghost Rider comics from the 90s when Danny Ketch became Ghost Rider.
Yes.
And they had some really incredible and evocative covers that really,
Mm-hmm.
I got big into Ghost Rider in the 90s. Have you read Jason Aaron's Ghost Rider series? Like the Ghost
No, I
Rider
haven't.
comics
I
that's
haven't
from
touched them.
2007. And he wrote probably like 20 issues or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's my favorite run of Ghost Rider comics ever. It's
Okay.
like, I think about it every once in a while and be like, man, Jason Aaron is the best. And
Yeah,
it's
I'm
so
gonna
great.
have to
It's
pick
really
that up.
great.
I must admit, in recent years, it's been harder for me to pick up comics because of space. Obviously, things like Marvel Unlimited, where it's obviously all online now, it's a much more accessible um, uh, kind of platform for us to do it. But for
Yeah.
me, it was space. I had to get rid of it, because when I did spend time out in America, that was the first time that I was really introduced to long boxes and kind of going into the comic book stores and seeing all these back issues. And it was like, yeah, these ones are all $1. These ones are all kind of 50 cents. These ones are the bit more expensive ones. They're individually priced. And I would spend hours just walking around different parts of the city and just like, yep, right, I've got part 2, 3 there. And it was the 10-year-old in me kind of going, well, look, I can actually go in and pick them all up now. So you try to stop me. And I just had these really fond memories of being out in the States and just reading full runs of comic books and then putting them at the bottom of my suitcase, ready to go home in a few months, and then bringing them back and then coming back out there a few months later and stocking up again. And it was a very good time for me as a collector. But because it took up so much space, I had to obviously kind of free up the collection in
Yeah.
place of toys. But I don't think I would have done that if the digital version wasn't available. And now, having that digital version of comic books available is great, because someone does recommend a run to you and you can just go there and see it and read it in its entirety.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Look, I know I'm a Marvel employee, but Marvel Unlimited is such a game changer, and
Hmm.
it makes it so easy. I could be like, yes, do you have like just a couple bucks a month? Do you want to read every single Marvel comic? Just subscribe.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I'm not loading any of my questions here to kind of make Marvel sound good, because I don't need to. But it's as a fan, it feels like there was always that kind of option of like, here you go, you're running out of space. Here it is in your pocket on your phone or on your tablet, and that's been a really cool thing and a good way of sharing things as well, having those digital versions. And don't get me wrong, nothing beats kind of having the pages, and there's that kind of smell and feel of a good comic book. And there are certain issues and stuff that I've kept just to share with my children, obviously just because I couldn't actually part with getting rid of certain ones. But it's great to be able to kind of just, because the stories are so expanded now, there are so, people see on the screens that MCU are doing fantastic things for the stories and for the arcs and for the characters. But it's a very, very small drop in the ocean, isn't it, for some of these characters and the backstory. So it is great to have that option to kind of go into. All right. So before we round up, let's go on one more question. So given your role at Marvel, obviously, I would assume you know quite a lot about various characters and variations of characters, and it's safe to say that you're there as an expert. So if one of the Marvel characters that you know of in the comic books could be turned into an action figure, who would it be and why?
That's a good question, and part of it sort of like depends on what I've been reading recently, because I read every book that we put out. I read a lot of old stuff all the time. I'm constantly thinking about different characters. So like sort of stuff comes to the front of my brain and goes to the back. I immediately think of Mangog. It's a big Thor villain who just has a really cool look. Again, Jack Kirby. They just look so cool. So Mangog would be really cool. Probably a little bit of a bigger Build-A-Figure, but he would be rad. He'd be really, really fun. Yeah, I have Sugar Man. He's up behind me, so I've got that. We've got plenty. We've got a couple of Watchers. I know Diamond Select has a really good one, and Hasbro has the Build-A-Figure one.
Which is lovely. It's really good as well. I recently got that wave, and I was really pleased with how he looked. Why you think, I've got to say, you mentioned Sugar Man. He was an absolute favorite Build-A-Figure of mine. When they released him, I was like, yes, like this is, this was, it was just a pinnacle of my collection. And I was opening the wave up, and my wife was sitting next to me, and I was, how it works with Build-A-Figures, you put your arms out. I started putting him together, and I must have had this really look of accomplishment on my face, and I kind of held him up, and she was like, what is that? Like, she's used to seeing the Iron Man, the Spider-Man. She was like, what is that? I was like, it's Sugar Man. Like, as if, don't you know? Like, come on. Like,
yeah.
And at that point, I realized we were on two very different paths in regards to what we thought was cool. And it was.
And that's okay. That's okay.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
Yeah. I would have said like a really great Sinister, but I think Hasbro has a really cool Sinister on the way. He looks really cool. Yeah, a great Devil Dinosaur. I would really love a really cool Devil Dinosaur.
That would be cool. That would be
a lot of fun. Yeah, just recently on one of my other shows from Marvel, it's called Marvel's Pull List, where we talk about comics every week. We just recorded an episode with one of the writers for Marvel Studios' She-Hulk show, and we had on Dan Slott, who wrote She-Hulk for a couple of years, because we were talking about one of Dan's runs on She-Hulk in our reading club, and that got me thinking, Awesome Andy would be a great action figure. And Awesome Andy it's the Mad Thinker's awesome android, but awesome.
Cool.
But the android is sort of like separated himself from the bad guy, and he just wants to live a life. And so he works in a law firm, and he communicates with this little like chalkboard, and he likes the New York Mets, and he just wants to like do a job and be friends. And he would make a really great, cute action figure. That'd be really fun.
That would be cool. That would be cool. I would love to see Kashala, obviously, with the recent runs and stuff. I did a custom, made a custom, and I actually sent it over to Taboo after we spoke. So that's over on his shelf now. But it was nice. I would love to see a Kashala, maybe as a deluxe with kind of various different heads and flame effects and stuff, just because I think that character, and obviously with the exposure that she's getting, the added exposure that she's getting now, I think it would be a really cool detailed figure. That would definitely be where I'd go. So
for sure. Yeah.
Cool. All right. No, Ryan, thanks ever so much for joining me today on Behind the Toys. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Hopefully the people watching, listening have enjoyed it. I think it's always cool to hear a little bit about, the people that we know and we hear and sort of find out a little bit about them and what makes them tick. So thank you very much for joining me. Obviously do check out This Week in Marvel, the 10-year strong official Marvel podcast hosted by Ryan, of course. It's my go-to for information, so definitely got my recommendation there. And obviously Agent M across other social media platforms. But yeah, thanks very much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I had fun. It was good. I get to I get to talk about myself and toys, and what better way to spend an afternoon?
Well, exactly. But thanks very much, and I'll catch you very soon.